I want to talk about covenants. There's the old covenant and there's the new covenant. And you know, the old is terrible and the new is wonderful. The old never works. God said it's old and it's passing away. And so I want to take your minds, and if you're a visitor here this morning, you came to hear the word of God. You know, healing and miracles happen when you believe what God says. And it's the word. He sent forth his word and healed them. Okay, we're going to look. I don't know where to begin this morning, because if I began at the beginning, you might not get this. Okay, imagine Abraham all those years ago. And there he was. And he was amongst a heathen tribe. And God came to him. And he said, Abraham, I want you to leave Mesopotamia. I want you to leave your country, your kindred, your tribe, your family. And I want you to go out to a place I'll show you. And Abraham heard God, and he couldn't quite cope with his leaving his relatives. So he took Lot with him. And God appeared to him. And God spoke to him. It's interesting. First of all, he said, you know, Abraham, I'm going to bless you. Your seed's going to be like the sand on the seashore. And, you know, there's a lot of sand on the seashore. Every grain of sand. It was unconditional, the promise. God said, Abraham, you know, I've called you. God just chose out a man from all men and spoke to him. Now, there came a time when God so prospered them that they had to separate Lot and Abraham. And Lot, you remember, set his face to go towards Sodom and Gomorrah, because he saw what he thought was wonderful opportunity. Watch out when you see wonderful opportunity and you go after it, because it'll set your face going the wrong way. Lots of people in business, they set their face to go the wrong way. Sodom and Gomorrah is waiting for them. Abraham said, okay, you go to the fertile plains. And he went the opposite way. Now at this point, God comes again and he takes him out and he says, look up, Abraham. No longer is this going to be an earthly seed, but look up at the stars in heaven without number. So shall thy seed be. Now we have a heavenly host, a spiritual people. And you know, God's blessing, he said, you know, blessing, I'll bless you. He said, if someone rises up against you, he'll end up rising up against me. Your enemies are going to be in trouble. And so Abraham went out, a man of faith, not knowing whither he went. But he looked for a city whose builder and maker was God. That was a heavenly city, the New Jerusalem. He saw through the covenants, he had the everlasting covenant. And the amazing thing was that people got trapped and snared as time went on, and the descendants of Abraham got snared. and they ended up in sin, and they ended up ignoring God's love and God's grace. And slowly, things transformed, and you found God had to raise up a man. His name was Moses. Now Moses suffered a lot. For instance, when he was born, he should have been killed. The only way his mother could preserve his life, she hid him. Do you remember, in a basket? All the men child should have been killed by the midwives. And he got brought up in Pharaoh's house. 40 years he remained there. Now he knew, because his mother was told to nurse him by Pharaoh's daughter. Hey, it was wonderful how God provided, but there was terrible persecution, and the children of Israel were crying out for a deliverer. They were whipped, they were beaten. Man, they suffered. And the more they suffered, the more they grew. Strange. And there came a day when God visited Moses in the backside of the desert. You know, after he'd killed the Egyptian, he fled. And he came in a burning bush. And the whole story of Moses being raised up to deliver his people, well, he was the man who was told, but it was God who was to be the deliverer, not Moses. And there came a time when Moses went before Pharaoh to say, God says, let my people go. Now the strange thing is, most of them wouldn't accept Moses for who he was. Most of them would not accept the word of God for what it was. And yet God could say to Pharaoh, let my people go. God owned them when they were still enemies. He said, I've come to deliver my people, and God owned them. Let my people go. But they weren't his people. Now they were the seed of Abraham. They were like the sand on the seashore. Let my people go. And Pharaoh said no. And then you remember, God brought the plagues on the Egyptians. Now, God did it. Moses went back time after time, and God hardened Pharaoh's heart. He wouldn't let him go until the firstborn was slain. Now, interestingly enough, every single one of them actually had to eat of a lamb on the Passover. And you remember, the angel of the Lord, not a demon, not a devil, the angel of the Lord passed over and slew the firstborn of the Egyptian. That was exactly what Pharaoh had tried to do to all the children of Israel. You remember? Kill the man-child. I want to tell you, when the angel passed over, they got a dose of their own medicine. I like it. That's my God. He fixed them good. And their blood on the doorposts and lintels, the blood was the blood of the lamb. But